Welcome to the Action Network podcast presented by BetMGM. I'm Gilles Gallant and I'm joined by Evan Abrams each and every week. He is our research director here at the Action Network. We're going to dive into all of the Sunday NFL action for Week 6. Brandon Anderson will have his hot reads later in the show, and Patrick Everson from Vegas Insider will give us an update on the sportsbooks in Vegas and how they fared this NFL Sunday. But first, Evan, let's talk Monday Night Football. Cowboys-Chargers. Cowboys are favored by 1.5 with one of the higher totals of the week, over-under at 51. And I'm looking at this total, Evan, even though we had a lot of unders this week. We'll talk about that more in a minute. This is a game where I think the Chargers could put up points. I mean, when you blitz Herbert, he's been fantastic in his career with facing the blitz. That negates part of the allure of this Cowboys defense. But speaking of defense, the Chargers defense, they don't really stop anybody either, right? Like, especially in the secondary, most passing yards allowed per game, but their O-line is healthy. They can protect Herbert a bit better. I'll be honest, I'm not going to bet a side on this one. I mean, obviously I'm a Cowboys fan, so I'm a little biased, but I will say this. If you like the under, that means that you should probably bet Dallas, because that Dallas defense showed up. They caused turnovers. I don't think the Cowboys can win in a shootout. They're not really built that way. So I think if you like the Chargers in this spot, then you should also like the over.
Here's a fun tip. I found this in Bet Labs. We have, first half systems, second half systems. So if the Chargers lead at the half, history would say to bet the Cowboys. The number's wild. Justin Herbert is 7-24-2 against a second half spread when leading at the half. He's even 0-3 this season. So out of 213 quarterbacks since 2005, he's 211th. Matthew Stafford and Matt Ryan are the other two that are just ahead of him, or just below him. So if the Chargers lead, they get out to that lead, maybe Dallas is a good bet.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think from a Dallas perspective, if I'm looking at touchdown scores, I think it's Michael Gallup or nobody really. Just the way the odds are based today, like Parham and Gerald Everett, they're getting a premium right now on their touchdown score odds. Like Parham at around plus 350 almost just seems like crazy when you knew that he was around plus 800 at the start of the year. But Gallup, I mean, he's second on the team in targets, second on the team in ADOT, 18 targets over his last 3 games. He hasn't gotten a touchdown yet, but decent odds given this high total for the game. Chance for lots of touchdowns. But on the Chargers side, I think we got to take a look at Justin Herbert, man. He's around plus 500. And I think running Herbert is back. He was dealing with that rib injury all of last year. He's got 3 rushing touchdowns in 4 games already this year, 5 red zone carries. Just to put that in perspective, he only had 6 last year. Their O-line is playing well. They've got Austin Eckler back, who could maybe be a little bit of a decoy. And I mean, for what it's worth, the Cowboys have also allowed the 5th most rushing yards to quarterbacks this year as well. So again, a quarterback in primetime touchdown, that is what I'm going to be looking at. All right, now let's look at the Sunday games. 2 teams on bye this week, the Packers and the Steelers. Favorites go 9-4 straight up and against the spread entering Sunday Night Football. But again, another week of totals going under. 10-2-1, another under week, Evan. Only week 2 now, with this being a big week for over so far this season.
Yeah, crazy. So we're 54-36-1 at 60% to the under for the entire year entering Sunday Night Football. That is the second best start for unders through week 6 since 2005. And here's the hook. The best start was last year. So unders are actually 162, 115, and 2 through 6 weeks over the last 3 seasons. So early in the year, last 3 years, best start to unders in our database. So unders lately have just been absolutely crushing.
Yeah, and we saw that too with touchdown scores as well, Evan. We talked about this off air, but last week, like after week 5, last year was the lowest amount of touchdowns scored in a 5-year stretch. Well, this year was 10 touchdowns less than last year after week 5. So again, we're just seeing way less scoring right now in the NFL. And public sides also, they go 7-5 against the spread entering Sunday Night Football.
Yes, so unders, wild trend, but when you look at the betting public, so that's 51% of tickets are higher. They are 51, 32, and 3 against the spread entering Sunday Night Football. That is the most profitable start for the public through week 6 since 2005, and it's actually been 500 or better against the spread in all 6 weeks. So at the moment, the public is kind of having their, their nice little run. But I will say this. When looking just specifically at week 6, it's probably important to note San Francisco lost. Philly lost. Those were the two biggest sides today, public sides. So, and both went down. Massive for the books, massive for parlays, big for teasers. So those two definitely helped overall. But if you look at it, Miami, Cincinnati, Baltimore, Rams, Minnesota, Detroit, all public teams, all covered. So overall, still running hot.
Well, let's talk about that public team, specifically the Eagles. The Eagles lose outright to the New York Jets. The Jets win 20-14. Eagles lose a 6.5-point favorites, and the under hits of 42.5. Evan, what a game, man. Jets, they beat the Eagles for the first time in franchise history, which to me, I thought that was probably one of the more shocking stats that I read after the game. But we can't talk about this game without talking about the turnovers. 3 interceptions from Jalen Hurts. A fumble from DeAndre Swift, for the Eagles. The Jets had both of their starting corners out today, too. Sauce Gardner was out, DJ Reed. And the Jets, they really contained the run better than any defense I've seen on this Eagles team. Only 85 rushing yards for the Eagles. Only 6 first downs. They averaged 12 first downs per game. And according to ESPN Stats and Info, Jalen Hurts was pressured on a season-high 40% of his dropbacks and pressured 20 times total. The 20 times is his most as a starter. That's 36 games, including the playoffs.
Yeah, it's just 3 interceptions for Hurts. Swift goes 10 of 17. Philly loses the turnover battle 4-0. It's just really hard to win those games. But I look at it from the Jets' point of view. They've faced 6 teams. So entering the season, 6 teams had double-digit win totals. The Jets have faced 3 of them. They're 2-1 and 3-0 against the spread. Their defense has shown up. They've done a good job. And if you think about it, allowing 14 to Philly, 23 to KC, 16 to Buffalo. They've gotten themselves into this spot. And now they have a bye. Then they face the Giants. And then they face the Chargers. You've got maybe a few winnable games coming up. Your schedule does get easier. So, and listen, Zach Wilson, no interceptions, no touchdowns. He just keeps you in the game. And I really feel like through Denver, through this game, even the Chiefs game, he's looked formidable. And I think it keeps them really in all these games. And then again, down top 2 corners, but still able to, kind of rattle Philly, as you said, through the pressure. So interesting. Here's a fun number. Simon Hunter kind of got me onto this, so I looked it up prior to last week. So the Eagles are now 11-2 first half money line, last 13 games. Hurts is 23-14-3 in his career in that spot. But the big number, since the start of last year, Eagles are 18-4-1 first half money lines. That's the most first half money lines wins in the NFL. So really start fast, and they faded in the second half here, but crazy.
Yeah, they led 14-3 in the second quarter. They didn't score the rest of the game. And Hurts, his interception, that was the 7th of the year. He only had 6 all of last year. So if you're sitting there with a Hurts MVP ticket or even an Eagles Super Bowl ticket, I wouldn't feel great, even with all the Niners injuries, and this is a theory, but I kind of feel like the Eagles, they play to their level of competition. You look at who they played, the Pats, the Jets, the Vikings, the Commanders. They're playing right to that level, but I feel like when they're going to be playing those teams like KC and San Francisco, who are later on their schedule, they're likely going to show up for those games. And I think that was the kind of loss that if you're an Eagles, if you have that Eagles Super Bowl ticket, maybe that was the loss that kind of just reminds them, hey, this is the NFL. You could still lose any given Sunday.
And also, one more thing. It's a good regroup next week. You're at home against Miami on Sunday Night Football, right? It's the game of the year type of situation. Maybe you did look ahead this Jets team a little bit for whatever reason, but that's your game of the year for them at least. So good forward stick for them.
Absolutely. And the Browns game of the year was their win over the 49ers today. Browns win 19-17. Niners lose outright as 9.5-point favorites, and the under, depending on what you got, if you got a 36 or a 36.5, it either pushed or it went under. But the alarming trend, I think we need to talk about is now Purdy and the San Francisco 49ers in Purdy starts are 8-0 against the spread at home, but just 2-4 against the spread on the road.
Yeah, I mean, I think it has, at least if you watch the game today, Cleveland's defense was something completely different, and also the injuries, right? I think it's hard to not
Injuries,
talk
man.
about, it's really hard not to talk about CMC, Debo, Trent Williams. There was just all over, at least mostly the offensive side of the ball. San Francisco fell apart, and, Purdy still found, let's just be clear about something. He got them into field goal range. They should have
He
won the
did.
game. They should have hit the field goal, and we should be talking about the fact that Cleveland played great, Cleveland covered the number, and San Francisco got the win. Like that's like the most likely scenario, and he missed. So they get the loss. We understand that, but Purdy did his job, and that's really from a Shanahan point of view all you can ask for. Got him into range, got the field goal set up, but yeah, Cleveland gets the win. 15 consecutive wins for the 49ers, snaps. But hey, Christian McCaffrey gets his touchdown, so his
Yeah,
streak
he did.
continues. And
And he scored again at minus 165. Like now, at this point, you'd be up 3.5 units if you bet his touchdown prop in each game. But I think, and again, opening score touchdown as well. Browns defense, they gave up that first touchdown to McCaffrey. Not really much else the rest of the game because those injuries just started to pile up. Even PJ Walker tried to give that game away. There was a late interception with 5 minutes to go. Like he is a 0% threat offensively. So even when they got in the red zone, he still took multiple sacks. So that's why the Niners were still in that game because of their defense. But again, just attrition. And that is literally what happened in that game where they're so top heavy because of those injuries that they don't really have a guy to replace that and replace that kind of production in that offense.
I'll tell you this though. So
All right.
Cleveland,
Yep.
I was gonna say Cleveland next week's at the Colts, and Cleveland's only laying 2 points. And if you look at Cleveland's defense, they've allowed 1,002 yards. It's the lowest through this many games since the '71 Ravens. Okay, their opponents are converting just 23% of first downs, lowest in the NFL. San Francisco was 3 of 12 today. I kind of like it. If they're gonna face Minshew next week, maybe 1.5. I mean, listen, you don't know who the quarterback is, right? I think we're going to assume Watson's going to be out, but I think it's a decent spot. I think Cleveland as a whole is just a good team.
Yeah, their defense can definitely keep them in games. And a game where there was some defense on display was definitely Seahawks-Bengals, where the Bengals eke one out, win 17-13. They do cover as 2.5-point favorites or 3-point favorites if you bet them earlier in the week. But the under hits 45.5. You're going to hear that a lot today, by the way. The under hits in a lot of these games. But Joe Burrow moves to 25-11-1 against the spread against teams outside of the AFC North, where he is 500 in the division.
To me, it's probably a massive win for the Bengals just because they get back to 500, they enter the bye, and then they've got San Francisco in San Francisco, as we just talked about how good they are at home, and then Buffalo on Sunday Night Football. This was a must win. Like you couldn't lose this game at home against Seattle. And honestly, we could talk about it more in a second. They should have lost. Like Seattle had multiple opportunities at many different times to take the lead in this game. And to me, Burrow just doesn't seem still. There's something off, right? Like
He's half
this
back.
season,
He's half
it just
back.
yeah, it's like a half. Like he's running at full speed. We understand that. We saw that in pregame. It was everyone was talking about it, but he's still 2 of 14 passing on 20+ yards downfield. All but 2 of his completions were inside 10 yards today. His third game below 200 yards passing. He only had 1 last year. So he was good first half, and something was just off in the second half, which kind of, left Seattle still in the game the entire time. So, they're in the division. Baltimore's still the favorite, but it's up for grabs.
Oh, if I'm a Seahawks better, though, I'm sick because they got 3 cracks at it to convert, and they could not score. And really, this has been the story of Geno Smith as a quarterback in the NFL and in Seattle. He reminds me of like a shooter in the NBA when they have an off night. And if they have an off night, the Seahawks just will look like shit offensively with Geno a quarterback when he has an off day. 2 interceptions. He looked indecisive, inaccurate throws. DK Metcalf's throwing his arms up on the sidelines. And again, it's just one of those games. But also, you can't take a sack on 4th down to end the game. Like, the O-line obviously didn't do him any favors, but again, that was one of the things where if I'm a Seahawks bettor, that game was right there for the taking, and the Bengals escaped with a decent win there. And Evan, more memories are made when you're there for live NFL action. And when you need tickets, our friends at Ticketmaster have got you covered. As the official marketplace of the NFL, Ticketmaster gives you more ways to find your perfect seat. Their interactive seat map gives you 360-degree previews of your section to make sure you have the best view of those pivotal plays. And if your plans change, Ticketmaster gives you more flexibility to sell or transfer your tickets, plus mobile tickets make getting in on game day a breeze, and you can even customize your Ticketmaster app to rep your team's colors. Find tickets today at Ticketmaster.com/NFL. Now time for the hot read from our own Brandon Anderson. Brandon, what do you have us looking for at early Week 7 lines?
All right, Week 7 hot read. We did not do well last week. 0-2 on our picks. Hey, we got CLV on both picks. We just missed the picks. Colts and Seahawks didn't come through for us. But 7-3 now on the season on the hot read. We're going to get it back next week. We're going to get ugly this week. Take a couple of unders on some ugly, low-scoring games. So if we're doing ugly, we're doing low-scoring. Let's start out right away at Thursday night. Give me the Jaguars and Saints under 42.5. Already dropping a little bit. Now look, we're going against the Jaguars a bit again here. They seem to do just fine coming home from London. That was the spot we talked about. But you dig into it a little bit. They got gifted an early touchdown. Colts ended up turning the ball over 6 times in that game. Jacksonville actually only had 233 yards, under 4 yards of play. They didn't really play that well. The Colts just kind of gifted them that game. Gardner Minshew was just awful. The defense, though, does look for real. They were 11th in DVOA entering Sunday. They're probably going to be top 10 now. They look good, and the Saints defense looks even better. The Saints lost to the Texans, but I think they were the better team in that game. They actually shut down a pretty good Houston offense pretty much the entire second half. Now, they were number 4 in DVOA defensively, New Orleans, and I think they probably move up too. So we've got 2 defensive teams here. That's what Jacksonville has become this season. And that London thing, it did not work out for us, but look at the spot this is for Jacksonville. They played 2 weeks in a row in London. They came home. They took care of the Colts. Credit where it's due. They've won all 3 of those games. Now it's a short week. Thursday night road trip to New Orleans. It is a brutal, brutal scheduling spot. Would not surprise me at all to see them come out a little bit flat. We're not necessarily picking against them here, so there's a little bit of a buffer. But I do think that they struggle to score and get into a flow here. Saints games this season, here's the totals. 31, 37, 35, 35, 34, 33. Those are all way under this 42.5 number. Average 34.2 points per game. 6-0 to this under by more than a touchdown. This total was 45 on the season look ahead, 43 Sunday morning, 42.5 now, already some 42s out there. I think it's going to keep slipping down. So primetime unders, 60% to the under last 4 years, already 12-6 this season. Home underdog unders, 61% last 2 years, already 63% this year. And if we get there, this one's starting to creep towards where we might hit 40 or below. And I love my Thursday night 40 or belows. 17-4 to the under since 2010. So Jaguars Saints under 42.5. Let's hope that one keeps dropping. Get the CLV while you can. And then we'll go to Sunday for when that's even lower. Give me the Browns and the Colts under 40.5. Whew, man, Browns look for real, at least on defense. Here they are, third string quarterback PJ Walker. They take down the mighty unbeaten 49ers. Defense held the 49ers to 17 points. This is a Niners team that scored 30 points or more all 5 games, 33.5 points a game. So what do? They get the opening touchdown script, the one that they've been practicing those plays all week. And after that, the only touchdown the Niners have the rest of the game is after an interception sets up an 8-yard field and they get in the next play. That's it. That's how the Niners scored in this game. The Browns defense is for real. They're number 1 by DVOA entering the game. They're obviously going to stay that way and probably get even better somehow against them after the Niners game. Cleveland so far, here are their games. 27, 48, 30, 31, 36. 4 out of the 5 games are 36 points or below, 34.5 overall. The one that went over, you might recall, was against the Steelers, and the Steelers had 2 defensive scores in that game. So This is another spot where I think the Browns defense keeps things under. And look at the quarterbacks in this game. Maybe Deshaun Watson comes back. We kind of thought that was supposed to happen this week. Honestly, who knows at this point? Does he play? Does he not? Does that even help them anyways? He's been terrible. He supposedly has a bad rotator cuff. We might get two backups here. We might get PJ Walker and Gardner Minshew. So I feel pretty good about taking an under in a game with Walker and Minshew out there. Minshew, I mentioned earlier, terrible today. Had 3 interceptions, had a strip sack. Hopefully we don't get too many turnovers here. That's the one way this maybe goes badly. Get a few points off of short fields. But Colts defense, they're not great, but they're good enough. That's kind of the Gus Bradley MO. I think this is low scoring. I think that it stays ugly. Stefanski for the Browns, and when his total is under 44, Browns are 13-6 to the under, 68%. This one's already sliding down as well. Give me the Browns Colts under 40.5. So, we're ugly. Week 7 hot reads. Thursday night football, Jacksonville, New Orleans, under 42.5. And then to Sunday, Cleveland, Indianapolis, under 40.5.
Okay, thank you, Brandon. Evan, let's keep going through these games. Panthers, Dolphins. Dolphins win 42-21. One of the few overs today at 47.5. And the Dolphins do cover as 14.5-point favorites. And Tua now 15-5 against the spread at home compared to just 9-10-1 against the spread on the road.
So here's one. So with that 15-5 mark for Tua, that is the 6th best mark at home over the last 20 years of 256 quarterbacks. Here's your list. Rodgers, Brady, Matt Hasselbeck, that's a fun one, Cam Newton, Andrew Luck, and Tua. So Tua's really doing great. He looks better on South Beach than he looks off South Beach. And here's a fun stat. If you had Carolina in this game, pretty bad beat. So Carolina, as a 14-point dog, led 14-0 and didn't cover the spread. So that is the biggest line since 2001 to lead by 14 points and not cover. Pretty tough.
Well, and then also how quickly they came back. They were up 21-0 like in a blink of an eye. And something to monitor too, Offensive Player of the Year, we kind of alluded to it a little bit. Christian McCaffrey, the oblique injury, that's going to mess up Offensive Player of the Year odds. Justin Jefferson, he's out as well for on IR. And then Tyreek Hill, he pulls up with a hammy in the third quarter. He did come back in the fourth quarter, but again, something to monitor. Like, it was just carnage right at the top of the Offensive Player of the Year odds market. And now I feel like that race is wide open. Raheem Mostert, he leads the NFL now with 11 touchdowns. He'll probably be right up there with Tyreek as far as odds go. I will say, though, Mike McDaniel did undo a wrong because the Dolphins did get a little too cocky there at the end. They pulled the starters early up 21, and then Mike White goes out there and a pick six by the Panthers gets it to 14. You think that the Panthers are going to cover, but then the Dolphins get the ball back. They go down to the goal line. They seal it with a touchdown with Salvon Ahmed. So Mike McDaniel, if you're a Dolphins bettor, is a real one for that. Ravens-Titans, let's talk about the London game. Ravens win 24-16. Ravens covers 4.5-point favorites, and the under 42.5 hits. Evan, this is one of those games where it was kind of a trend buster because we talked about this on air about how Lamar Jackson, when he's a favorite of more than 3 points, not a good cover in that spot. But now he did cover in that spot, so he moves to 3-13 against the spread since the start of 2021. And then another trend that got busted is Mike Vrabel as an underdog. Usually he is pretty solid in this spot, but now moves to 28-19-1 against the spread.
The biggest piece of information that I think mattered in the end in this game, and it's just because the way the game started and how Tennessee had to come back, was I think it's really imperative when they arrived in London. And I think people might be like, this or that. But listen, Friday versus earlier in the week, Baltimore was up 18-3 at the half. And even in the postgame, Lamar said he cap-tipped the coaches for it. He said he thinks it really helped the team by being there. So I think that's something interesting. Baltimore, 8 of 16 on third down. Tennessee, 1 of 9. And I think we have to mention, there was, first of all, a ton of quarterbacks got hurt this week. From Jimmy to Baker and Ryan Tannehill in this game. So Malik Willis got time. And I think when you look at Malik Willis, and now Tennessee's going into their bye week, right? So they face Atlanta at home after the bye. They got to figure out what to do here, right? Malik Willis was sacked 4 times and had 5 pass attempts in the game. He was holding the ball way too long, and Tannehill's throwing interception. So I think Vrabel's kind of throwing up his hands. It's a tough spot for them. And I will say this: international games, favorites continue to do well. So 30-10-1 straight up, 26-15 against the spread. Add 1 to that, so now 31-10-1. So favorites tend to do well in these spots when you go overseas.
All right, so Vrabel, though, makes the decision at the end of the game that was a huge swing for bettors because he chose to kick a field goal there on third down with 41 seconds left. They could have still made at least another attempt. I didn't love it. And I mean, look, Malik Willis, he looked awful. You're not kidding. But, it just, I was a little kind of annoyed there because the refs, they did everything they could. They called multiple penalties the whole final drive. Titans get to the 1. They can't convert, and they kick that field goal. And if you're a Titans bettor, I'm starting to become like an empath. Like, I don't know. I felt bad if I was betting the Titans on that side. So
should have thrown it one more time. He should have thrown it one more time.
At least one more time.
There was there's a play, there's a fade. I get it. But you needed the field goal, so tough call, but I get it.
I mean, how bad is Will Levis, though? That he cannot beat out Malik Willis for quarterback 2 in that spot? Oh, my God. All right, Commanders-Falcons. Commanders win 24-16. Falcons lose at home with Desmond Ridder for the first time. First home game loss for Desmond Ridder in college and the pros. The Falcons do not cover as 1.5-point home favorites, and the under 42.5 hits. You've been tracking Sam Howell as far as like sacks go. Now, he was leading the NFL in sacks coming into this game, gets sacked 5 more times. Is he on pace right now to break David Carr's record?
So not on pace, but he's right behind one of Carr's season. So Howell has 34 sacks in 6 games. Through 6 games, 2002 David Carr was at 39, so 5 more. And then 2005 David Carr was at 35, so 1 more. So Howell right now on pace for about the 3rd most in that span. And then you look at Daniel Jones, probably not worth forgetting about him. 28 sacks in 5 games. Obviously he's out for Sunday Night Football tonight. So.
For sure. Yeah, and Ridder just isn't good enough. It's annoying to watch now. Like, loses the first home game ever, but had that critical interception at the goal line with 5 minutes to go. They're down 8, 6 straight incompletions to end the game. Like, get Taylor Heineke in there. I can't watch Desmond Ridder play another game of football.
0-10 first half against the spread. So just hasn't covered a first half in his career. And the trend that I looked at here, which kind of continues to run, Falcons 4-12, 4-11-1 against the spread after a straight up win. So can't put together a win streak under Arthur Smith at all.
All right, let's run through the rest of these games. Saints, Texans. Texans win 20-13. The under hits with the Saints losing outright as road favorites at 2.5 and the under at 42.5. Saints now 6-0 to the under, though. Only team in the NFL to have all their games go under. And C.J. Stroud covers his 4th straight game. Again, really going to be probably in that favorite spot now for Offensive Rookie of the Year. But the INT luck runs out. He did finally throw an interception, so that streak is over. We don't have to hear about that anymore, about how his streak is longer than Tom Brady and every other good quarterback that doesn't turn the ball over. But, some questionable pass plays to end the Texans' possession, though, at the end of this game. And never thought think to myself that, you left too much time for Derek Carr. But, I mean, he had 2.5 minutes left for the Saints, and he just looked like Derek Carr, inept as usual, and they do not convert. Lions, Buccaneers. Lions win 20-6. The under hits of 42.5. Lions do win as road favorites, as -3 favorites. Jared Goff and the Lions, honestly, though, they did whatever they wanted through the air. 8.1 yards per completion. They were 7-12 on third down. And Evan Baker Mayfield we talked about that hot and cold aspect with Baker, and this is the cold part. Horrendous game. 19 for 37 passing, 200 yards, and he was 2 for 12 on third down.
Yeah, he just looked really bad overall. And here's the stat for Baker. So he's just been historically bad in the second half. 28, 47-1 second half ATS, 37%. Though he's 3-2 this season. But here's the nugget, right? 16, 20-1 second half ATS when he has the lead. When he doesn't, 8-24 second half ATS. Worst of 240 quarterbacks since 2005. He's lost 6 straight in that spot, including today. So when he has the lead, he's about 500. Kind of shows up second half. When he doesn't, he's just a big fade.
That I don't need to hear any more after that. That's perfect. Perfect wrap up on Baker Mayfield. Colts Jaguars. Jaguars win 37-20. Total does go over at 43.5, and the Jaguars cover easily as 3.5-point favorites. The Jaguars just have the Colts number, man. They're 15-2-1 against the spread since 2015 against the Colts. Like, even that London trend, teams coming back, not taking the bye, that's usually a smash spot for the opposite team.
Did not matter.
And the Jaguars just put that to rest very easily.
Yeah, did not matter at all. Listen, I bet the Colts last week when Richardson went out and Minshew came in, and I was like, oh no. And it ended up working out, but he was a pumpkin this week. It did not look well. Jacksonville gave ETN every carry he wanted, and it was a blowout.
Yeah. Vikings-Bears. Vikings win 19-13. Total does go under at 44.5, and the Vikings do cover as 3.5-point favorites and play in another one-possession game. Every game this year has been by one possession, and their record reflects that. They are 2-4 after going 11-0 last year. Honestly, there wasn't much worth watching for this game. 3 turnovers in the first half. Justin Fields gets hurt. He leaves in the second half, and the Vikings just sat there and waited until Dyson Bagent turned it over to them, and that was pretty much it. So Cardinals Rams win 26-9. Total goes under 47.5, but the Rams do cover as 7-point favorites, and this was pretty much just a field goal fight for about the first half. Thought we might see that all the game, but then Cooper Kupp, welcome back, another big game, another touchdown, and the Rams, they could be feisty come playoff time once you get Kupp, Stafford, and McVay clicking here. There could be a sleeping beast here in the NFC. All right, let's end it off here. Patriots-Raiders. Raiders win 21-17. The total does go under of 41.5, just barely, and the Raiders do cover as 3-point favorites. Mac Jones is 3-13 now as an underdog in his career. He has lost 12 consecutive starts straight up and ATS as an underdog. And yeah, I'm just going to put it to you this way. Is this the last start for Mac Jones? This is going to be the question I'm going to ask you every week until we see it change.
So I actually don't even have it in front of me. Oh, there, I do know. Yeah. Oh, here's the joke. They're at home against Buffalo next week. So it's like when you go into that game, the question is, who else do you have? Like, you even saw Malik Cunningham today in the lineup. I know Zappe was inactive, and then Greer was inactive, I'm not really sure what you do there. So maybe he gets another start, but here's the stat I was looking at. So the Bills 9-point favorites in New England. It'd be the largest home dog for New England since 2001. It was Brady's first start. They were plus 11.5 against Peyton Manning. They won the game 44-13, which absolutely means nothing. But largest line, Mac Jones lost 13 straight starts. It's a dog. It's just really bad. So I don't think
sad things to hear.
But yeah.
One of the sad things was during the third quarter, during the broadcast, the announcer goes, and Ramondre with the longest run of the season, 16 yards, and then got hurt like the next play. I was just like, oh my God, things are bleak. And from a result standpoint, if you had the Raiders -3, you got super bailed out at the end because Max Crosby gets that late hit for the Patriots touchdown, which then puts you in a position of the Patriots now covering, but then gets the safety at the end for the Raiders cover. Oh, man, it was just unbelievable. All right, let's now check in with Patrick Everson with Vegas Insider to see how sportsbooks fared in Las Vegas for Week 6. I'm joined now by Patrick Everson with Vegas Insider. Patrick, we talk about this every week. How did the sportsbooks do? What's the vibe?
The vibe is that they'll be buying their own drinks behind the counter tonight. They've got on this Sunday evening as we talk to you. I know you come out on Monday. A very good Sunday behind the counter, and honestly, it even started early for one odds maker I talked to said the London game worked out very well there with the Ravens, and they also noted that the two big upsets today, which you perhaps already alluded to. I mean, look. San Francisco going on the road, laying 9.5, a game that opened 4.5 generally. Thought it was going to be maybe not a walkover because the weather wasn't necessarily good in Cleveland and it is a lengthy road trip, but that was a shocker. And then you get the Eagles losing outright to the Jets. Look, if Gilles, if there were any moneyline parlays or teasers that survived the Niners game, they did not survive the Eagles game, pretty much unquestionably. Odds makers were definitely pretty happy with that. I even talked with BetMGM, Nevada, Scott Shelton about it. I went back and forth with him, just reading some text from him. He said monster day for the books, and honestly, I know we're talking NFL here, but when you factor in a pretty good Saturday on the college football front, he said it's the best weekend in recent memory for the books. So they certainly didn't mind at all seeing the Eagles lose outright. And of course the Niners lose outright as well, which means we have no more undefeated teams in the NFL.
Yeah, and one team that I think the public was definitely on that probably was able to get a little bit of action back had to have been the Dolphins today with that late cover, especially after Mike White throws the inexplicable pick six there at the end of the game, and then Mike McDaniel able to seal that cover for the public at the 14.5.
Yeah, no question. The Dolphins are a super public team at this point. Look, notwithstanding the debacle that they had when they just got shellacked up in Buffalo, they've been really consistent. They look certainly the role of one of the best teams in the league. And when you consider that two of the best teams in the league got beat today on the NFC side of things to opponents that are, perceived and really are lesser than the Buffalo Bills, that makes the Dolphins look pretty good. So yeah, the Dolphins certainly got a little bit back for the public. So too, I would say, did the Detroit Lions, who are just an ATM for bettors for almost a year now. They've got almost a season under their belt, 13-3 straight up, 14-2 against the spread in their last 16 games. They're just a machine.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially when you look at the splits of Jared Goff and how he has usually performed at home as opposed to on the road, where the scoring outputs are usually much less. Let's talk about Monday Night Football, though, because the Cowboys are going to be facing the Chargers. Cowboys typically do get a lot of action, but, this Chargers team playing at home, maybe people don't want to bet on the Chargers here in this spot because the Chargers tend to charger at the end of the game. Is Monday Night Football getting a lot of action from sportsbooks that you're speaking with?
The Chargers tend to charger. That's such a great line. It is so on the spot. It's the Raiders do that a lot too. The Raiders tend to Raider. How they managed to cover today was just disgusting. But that's how it goes. Look, going into tonight, there wasn't necessarily a whole lot of chatter. Going into Sunday night, I should say, there wasn't a whole lot of chatter about Cowboys Chargers. But I think there will be. I think this game's going to get pretty good play. You've got two good quarterbacks, two reasonably good quarterbacks. Certainly Herbert's a great quarterback. Prescott's a very good quarterback, but coming off a very disappointing performance as the Cowboys get shelled. But the Cowboys don't travel back home. They didn't make another road trip out of this. They just shuttled down the coast to get ready to play the Chargers. I will say at BetMGM, really good two-way action on this game. We still got, some time before kickoff, but slightly more tickets on the Cowboys, slightly more money on the Chargers. So two-way action on the game. I think it'll be pretty well bet, and some bettors are probably going to be licking their wounds and trying to win a little back on that Monday night game. But Gilles, I couldn't tell you which side you should go with in this case. Do you back the team that just got blasted at San Francisco, or the team that, as you said, Chargers going to charger? The coach makes a lot of interesting decisions in his play calling, and you feel like Herbert is a great quarterback, but is this team going to win tomorrow night? I don't know. I guess if pressed, I'm going to take the Chargers at home to win the game, but that's but they're the short underdog as we have it right now.
Yeah, I talked about it earlier in the show where I just said I would rather tie my money to the total because if the Cowboys win, it's likely because their defense was able to get to Herbert, maybe get some pressure, get some turnovers, because they're not really built to be in a shootout. So I think if you're on the Chargers, you're probably looking at the over as well. So that's probably where I think the public will be leaning to, especially with these teams being so public and having such public quarterbacks. Let's talk about Week 7, though. Is there any game already for Week 7 that has saw movement already from sharp action? Obviously, there's a ton of injuries, that we're going to have to reflect on. Maybe we don't necessarily dive headfirst into that, but maybe a game that doesn't necessarily have a big injury question mark at the top.
Right. I think, honestly, the Dolphins-Eagles game on Sunday night. This was interesting. So I spoke with an odds maker Sunday night here in Vegas that opened Philly -2 late in that Jets game. The Eagles-Jets game wasn't over yet, so Philly had not lost that game. Subsequently, Philly loses. The odds maker and his risk team, they talk about it. They move the Eagles up from 2 to 2.5. And the reason, he said, is the perception will certainly be that the Eagles are too good, Gilles, to lose 2 in a row.
Yep.
And the odds maker added that the betting public might recall the last time the Dolphins were underdogs at Buffalo. Dolphins got shellacked. I think we alluded to it a few minutes ago, 48-20, a big 48-20 loss. So both these teams are very public sides. There's going to be plenty of action on both sides, the odds maker said. But they actually moved the Eagles up a little bit on what they think will be the public perception and the public money coming in on, hey, the Eagles aren't losing 2 in a row. They're going to win and cover this game under a field goal. They would feel good about that.
Well, especially if the status of Tyreek Hill trends downward to him maybe not playing. Now, he did come back in that fourth quarter against Carolina, but he did pull up with a hamstring injury in that second half, so that is something to monitor for Eagles-Dolphins. All right, Patrick Everson from Vegas Insider. Thanks for everything, buddy. We'll talk again next week.
Absolutely. Have a great week.
All right, thank you, Patrick. And thank you for listening to the Action Network podcast presented by BetMGM. Enjoy Monday Night Football and keep an eye out for all of our NFL Week 7 podcasts right here on the Action Network.